Where's Jennifer at?
She had to work late at her real job.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Understandable.
She said she's in Greensboro.
Yeah.
Don't go too far. Hello, Johnson family. So I see that he joined. Hey, Dwayne, come here for a minute. Let's try this again. Now we're going. Okay.
Is your remote work?
Yeah, it's working now. Okay. All right. So,
AV.
all right. So, what this is talking about is checking the O-ring. Now, this is a DIN regulator, and this is what y'all are going to have. This is what I use. I believe this is what he uses. This is a better style system. But with a DIN regulator, you own the O-ring, where normally a diver is relying on the rental tank. So a yoke regulator relies on the tank, the O-ring in the tank, where we own and keep up with our own O-rings. But what this is talking about for our regs is checking this O-ring here, which is going to be held in with this cap or that cap. Otherwise, you've got to check the O-ring here that comes with the rental tank, and those are sometimes sketchy. It's the dive shop's general responsibility to have a good tank for you, but the problem with that is if you're out in the middle of the ocean and you don't check it until you're out in the middle of the ocean and you've got a bad O-ring on their tank in the ocean, it's going to ruin your dive and it's not going to really affect them that much. So what I always do is I have a little save-a-dive kit that's got O-rings and straps and all the extra little kind of inexpensive stuff that'll get me going in the water. Even if it's their responsibility, they're not out of a dive, I'm out of a dive. So in the store, it's okay to leave a tank standing, but outside of the store, never walk away from a standing tank. So if you're, like if this tank, if I were at the pool, if I were on the dock, if I were whatever, before I walked away from it, I would lay it down. Even if it's hooked to a BC, I would still lay it down. Does that make sense? Let's see. Think of how boats rock and all that kind of stuff, especially, so you don't want to leave anything standing. Particularly on boats, you want to tie it down really well. Usually they'll have some sort of method to tie it down. So this is going to be a little bit tricky to get on camera, but I'm going to try to get it where you can see it, okay? But we're going to go through assembling a reg just a bit, or a whole system. Can you see this at all?
I can.
Okay, perfect. All right. So there's a bunch of different ways to assemble a system, but I'm going to show you my way, and it'll hopefully work for you, but you have to follow it pretty well. How people get messed up with this is that they'll get things mismatched. So right now the tank orifice or hole is facing away from me, and my system is to stand with the tank orifice or hole facing away from me. Normally that means the tank valve is facing this way, but it doesn't on my tank. And now when I assemble stuff, nothing gets assembled between me and the tank. As long as you assemble everything over here, it's got to be right. What can't happen is people will put their BC here and their reg here and things just don't line up. So watch me do this. So orifice or hole facing away from me, I put my hands through, or my arm through the BC this way, like this is where I would go, and then I put the BC away from me. Generally, most BCs, except brand new BCs, are going to have the strap broken in, so you don't have to worry about adjusting the strap. And when y'all get y'all's new BCs in, I'm going to go ahead and pre-adjust it, but it might change just a bit. But usually, once you get a BC strap adjusted, You don't really want to mess with it because it's right and it's kind of hard to fiddle with. So what I do is I hold up the weight here and I wiggle on these straps at the back. So what I'm looking for is when I hold the cloth of this BC up, it's about even with the top of the tank valve here. Now, these straps are pretty complicated to weave back. I can show you how to weave it back, but there might not be. Basically, don't unweave it if you don't have to, because it's going to be a tank, all right? So to tighten the strap, once you get it kind of right, what you're going to do, and you shouldn't have to do this once you get it set, but you're going to pull here, hold tension on the strap, flip up on the buckle. That buckle now holds that tension I just put in it. Put it in here. Use the strap as a handle, and I might not be able to do it on this table here. And you hear the click. The click means it's weaved right. If it just kind of does like a mushy close, it's probably not weaved right. Now, the instruction manual or the online is going to tell you to pick the BC up by the strap and shake it, see if the tank slips. That seems like a bad plan to me, so that's not the way I really do it. Of course, I would close both, but I'm not going to do it for here. So what I do is I try to wiggle the buckle. If I can wiggle the buckle, it's too loose. If I can't wiggle the buckle, it's about right. So now, a little bit of wiggle's fine, but if you can actually see it move, that's way, way too loose. What a lot of new divers will do is they will not get it tight enough. During the dive, their tank is going to, when this gets wet on a new BC, this will stretch just a bit. Their tank will slip, and during the dive, it'll start slipping out from the bottom, and that's less than ideal. Okay. Now, once again, I turned it sideways just so y'all could see it. I'm turning this back away from me again. We're going to continue with my theme of assembling my rig over here, not between me and the tank. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to put the first stage. This is the first stage of pressure reduction up here. I'm going to put it at the top with the hoses facing down. Now, I don't have mine completely set up like y'all are going to have, but I put both second stages generally off to the right and everything else off to the left. I'm going to take my dust cap off. Now, mine is a den reg that I use strictly as den. Everything in this part of scuba assembly is just hand tight. And I really mean hand tight. So if you tighten it too much, it's going to pop an O-ring. So for me, hand tight on this is I turn it till it stops, and that's enough. Now, a lot of guys think, well, if a little tight is good, a lot of tight is better, and they'll really tighten it strong. That's not going to work. That's going to pop an O-ring. It's going to cause an issue. So too loose might leak a little bit right now, and we can fix it. Too tight is eventually going to blow an O-ring. Whether it blows one now or 5 minutes from now, it's going to pop an O-ring. All right. So now I'm going to find the corrugated hose here. This is the inflator hose, and I'm going to find the single hose on the left. I want the shorter one too. All right, so you only have one until you get a dry suit. So this has a sleeve on it. See a little bit of sleeve you pull back here. You're going to line it up with this silver nipple, and then you're going to pull back on the sleeve and push pretty hard. And you didn't hear it, but it clicked in. And now I'm going to tug the two to make sure it doesn't come apart. Sometimes you can get it where it looks like it's on, and then it pops off later. So I always tug it to make sure it doesn't come off. I'm going to run this through the, just because I can't get to it, but I would run this through the Velcro here to keep it kind of secure. Now mine doesn't have a pressure gauge that you can get to, but if it did, I would hold the pressure gauge down and away in case it shoots off, blows up, any of that kind of stuff, but none of y'all are going to have SPGs. All right, so I'm going to turn this on slowly. All right, so I've just hit the purge. So this is the purge button on these. That would blow water out, all that kind of stuff. We'll get into that a little bit more later on. One thing I do want to show you to be concerned with, or at least be aware of, let me turn this on and get my computer reading. Just a second. All right, so it shows my tank pressure is 3277. This is a full tank with my tank on, right? Now, what I want to do before every dive, I'm going to take a, can y'all see this number? The bottom right number is 3271, okay? Now, right now it's 3248. It just, the pressure just barely moved. Now, this is a really accurate gauge, but it moved a little bit, but nothing substantial, right? Tank on, I start breathing from it. I see a little bit of pressure drop, but not much when I take 4 or 5 breaths from it. What you want to be aware of and be concerned with is that, and I'd like you to do this every dive, to take 4 or 5 breaths from your gauge before you do your dive, before you ever get in the water. That's making sure your tank is full and your tank is on. Now watch this. This is something to think about. So I'm going to turn my tank right now with the tank on. It shows my tank pressure at, I just lost the connection. 3238. Okay. We'll turn the tank off. Now mine's got a little bit of a leak, so it might leak down quick. But the tank is off. It still shows 3238. All right. I could jump in the water, get to 6 or 8 or 15 or 20 feet, and it still show full tank because it's still got pressure in the lines. All right. So, but when you turn the tank off and take 4 or 5 breaths, it's going to drain all that pressure, and then you'll see the difference. Then you'll see it go to 0. I want you to catch an empty tank or a turned off tank before you're on the dive. Does that make sense? Does that not make sense? Okay, so let's go through it. Now mine's leaking, which makes it a little bit harder. Okay, so right now, this tank shows full, right? I can go do my dive all the time, happy, no big deal, tank shows full. Turn it off. It still shows tank full, all right? Because there's air in the lines, right. That's still 3278 psi pressure. Just a few breaths of that will take that pressure down to 0, and so you'll notice it quickly. But if you take 4 or 5 breaths with the tank on and it doesn't move, you know the tank is on. If you turn it off and take 4 or 5 breaths and the pressure drops really ely, that's a sign that the tank is turned off or not on all the way, or that it's empty. Okay. All right. Good job. All right. So let me set this off to the side. So, and just FYI, this is that's the Eon Steel computer. This is all my setup, and this is the Atomic T3 regs. That's the regs that I sell, or that anybody sells. All right, so in scuba, generally, you want to let the stronger diver put the gear on first. You do that so that the person that can support the weight the longest is supporting the weight the longest. You also want to know how your buddy's gear works pretty well. Both of you should know how each other's gear works. So if either one of you get in trouble, get in a bind, you can help your buddy and kind of take over for him or kind of work his gear and things like that. The first rule of problem management at the surface is to establish positive buoyancy. What that means is if you have a problem at the surface, a lot of divers can't stay at the surface for whatever reason. You want to know how to inflate your buddy's gear so he can stay up as well. So this is kind of a very simple checklist for diving: air on, BC, inflated, computer activated, and functioning. That's saying those are the 3 things you should make sure before every dive. You actually want to come up with a much bigger list that's kind of your personalized list. But this is a good way to start. So I always make sure my air on, make sure I can breathe, do that little check there, make sure my regulator's tight, my tank strap is tight, nothing's slipping, I've got my weights, my computer's working, my computer's reading, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes these computers won't read from very far. So if you notice, when I put it on the table when it was up, it lost signal. It's made to read in water. And so I brought it back close to it. So don't necessarily worry too much if it doesn't read on your arm. You might have to do this to get it to read because these are specifically made for water. Let's see. I'm picky about anybody touching my rig, touching my tank once I turn it on. So once I turn it on, I don't really want anybody touching it because I want to know that it's where I need it to be. And just in my head, I want the confidence to know that it's right. So if I see anybody over messing with my gear right before I put it on, I'm going to check it again before I put it on, make sure it's tight, make sure everything's right. It's your responsibility to make everything right. So my general plan for diving is that anytime I could fall in the water, I want to be ready to dive. Now, remember, the back of the boat is slippery, the back of the boat's rocky, all this kind of stuff. So if I could possibly slip and hit the water, I keep my reg in my mouth, my mask on, my BC at least partially inflated, because I want to be ready to dive. Even getting off the boat or getting out of the water, wading back in, I keep ready to dive until if I slip and fall, all I'll do is land in the boat. And that's when I'll take my mask off and my reg. So the method of entry that most divers prefer on big dive boats or pools or things like that, is the giant stride entry. The plan behind a giant stride entry is that you're not jumping in the water, you're not hopping in the water. What you're doing is you're kind of taking a big giant step, but you're getting this far away from the edge of whatever you're jumping off of. If you try to hop in or jump in, you might just jump this far and smack your head on the back on the way down or hit the tank on the way down. But if you just take a big giant step, you usually hit with your legs spread, you'll hit pretty far, you'll stay pretty far from the edge of the boat. That's the plan. Now that's kind of the preferred method of entry. The back roll entry is sort of the sea hunt method. That's where you sit on the edge of the boat, cross your arms, cross your legs, and roll off the back of the boat. You need to use that method if it's for kind of small boats, or like if you have a bass boat or a personal boat, or if there's a Zodiac or one of those, it's called a rib, rigid hull inflatable boats. So that kind of small boat, you really have to use the back roll entry. I don't like it all that much because when you hit the water upside down and you're disoriented just for a minute. You don't know, is my buddy this way, that way, which way do I need to go? It just takes a second. If you need to do it, use that method, but I prefer not to do it if I can help it. Shore and surf entries, really, you're really just trying to decide how strong is the current, how big are the waves, when do I need to put my fins on. If the waves are really hard, I might put my fins on standing on sand and wade in with my fins on. If the waves aren't that bad or the current's not that bad, I might wade up to chest deep where the water is supporting the weight of my gear, and then I can put my gear on. All right, so this is a dive in Bonaire. This diver's standing on the back of the boat. She's about to do a giant stride entry. She does a pretty good entry, you'll see. So what she's doing, and she's not quite entered yet, but the dive guide back here is checking her tank to make sure her tank is on as well. She is going to, with her left arm, she's going to grab everything dangly. So usually her console, if she has one or whatever, make sure her BC is at least partially inflated. She's going to look straight out. She's going to put the palm of her hand over her regulator and kind of her fingertips over her mask. She's going to look straight out and she's going to do a giant stride. You see the boat rocking and she kind of loses her balance for a bit. One thing to worry about a tad is don't get your fin tips caught on the water, and so like slow yourself down as you go. Let's show you that just one more time. So that worked pretty well for her. What I have seen some divers do is when they take that first step, they get immediately tripped up on the water because the boat's so close to the water, and then they tip over. It's fine to tip over, but plan to face plant as opposed to falling on the boat. It would be better to face plant in the water than to trip into the boat or break your leg getting into the water.
Does she pop back up?
Yeah, she not in the video, but she does pop back up. I'll show you another one here at some point. All right, so this is kind of my preferred dive boat here. This particular boat is this Express Water Sports boat out of Merle's Inlet, but I just showed this picture to kind of give you an idea of what dive boats look like and kind of just give you an idea of how things work a little bit. So they call this a camera table here. This is a camera table here at the back. You can kind of use it for whatever you want to, but don't take over like the entire boat, okay? If you look, let me just move the mouse where everybody can see. Let's see if I can see this. So, okay. So right here is a dive bag. That diver should really have the dive bag tucked under the bench. They don't, but it is what it is. Right here, you can't, let me catch this light. All right, so Usually the boats will have a rinse bucket or two, depending on kind of how big the boat is and what it's set up. And they'll usually explain this ahead of time. On this particular boat, this is the camera rinse tank. Don't put your mask, don't put anything in this bucket but cameras. Everybody will get mad and grumpy if you put your mask in this boat. Right about here on this boat is going to be a mask rinse tank as you get off the back. That's where you rinse the defog out of your mask or whatever else. I usually use my water bottle to defog just because I want my defog rinsed off before I'm about to get in. I have a preferred method right here. I usually like to sit right here on the boat because it's kind of the driest and the least rocky, sort of. You don't get the diesel smell at the back and all that kind of stuff either. You'll see a sign right here that says crew works for tips. Usually boat crew at a dive operation, or they're kind of college kids, and they're just kind of barely scraping by, and they're getting to dive for free to help out on the boat, but they don't make much money or any money at all. So try to tip pretty well. Usually on a dive boat, I'll try to tip, like let's say it's $100 to go on the dive boat that day. I'll try to tip $15 or $20 if the service is good. If I go to Mexico or somewhere international that I'm going to be there for the week, this is just my personal opinion and kind of how I do things. The first day in Mexico, I might tip $50 or $60 or $80, and they're going to just run around and bend over backwards trying to make me happy for the rest of the week. Now I'll tip again as it goes on, but the first day I'm going to tip pretty big, and then they're looking after me pretty well. This boat has a life raft up here, and up here is going to be life preserver stuffed into this. Also, a lot of boats will have coolers. This particular dive boat, they have a cooler, like this guy is sitting on a cooler. This cooler is, they'll tell you ahead of time, but that's for fish that people spear. The one at the back is for your drinks or whatever. They don't provide drinks. So if you get into the cooler and just see a drink, it's somebody else's drink. If you don't put it there, it's somebody else's. Usually what I'll do is I'll have like a grocery or shopping bag with my name written on it and tie all my stuff in that shopping bag as opposed to just dumping them in the cooler. This boat has a head that's up at the very front up here. It's a few steps down to get into the head. If you're getting a little bit seasick, I wouldn't necessarily suggest going into the bathroom. That's going to be the rockiest and the hottest and the stinkiest, and I wouldn't go there. If you're going to get seasick, I would try to lean over the boat or go over the back of the boat. Don't fall over but you're going to be, if you go down into the bathroom, it's going to be the sickest and the worst place in the whole boat for you. But don't get up here there's a top deck on this boat too. Don't get up here and throw up on somebody down. So this is the same boat looking the other direction. Something to think about is notice the back of this boat, the transom of this boat. All it's got is this mesh thing back here that they put up when the boat is tied off. Don't leave stuff laying on deck because there's nothing to stop it from just rolling into the ocean. All right. This is designed to be easy for divers to get off of, but it's easy for stuff to fall off of as well. You need to be very careful that you tie your tanks down. So there's little bitty benches to sit on, and there's kind of pipes that you put your tank and your rig in, and there's going to be a bungee cord that you rope over your reg or your tank or whatever. Tie it down pretty well because if the boat gets rocking pretty bad, things will tip over. Thank you, Dwayne.
You're welcome.
All right. And this would be the drink cooler, fish cooler at the front, another mask or another camera table as they call it. You'll see some spear guns on this. That's spear guns here. There might be one there or whatever. And these are the boat ladders that they put up as the boat is moving. All right. So this is kind of how it goes. And you can really sit pretty much anywhere. I have my preferred spot on dive boats. I try to get out of the sun and out of the wind and out of the splashing water and all that kind of stuff.
So is that the kind of boat that we're going to be on down in Florida?
We're not going to be on a boat at all. If we get on a boat, we'll be on a pontoon boat in Florida.
Which springs are we?
Probably Jenny Springs, Crystal River, and maybe Blue Grotto or Devil's Den. So we will, if we get on a boat, it'll be on a pontoon boat in freshwater. We're not getting you seasick on your first dive trip.
And we get to walk out.
You're going to walk down steps from a parking lot. We're going to get dressed on a picnic table, and it's going to be a good day. So yeah. Now, so this is my favorite dive boat of anywhere I dive. This is Express Water Sports. It's a big, comfortable boat with a really, really good crew. Now, and then when you get on this boat, it's sitting at a dock. You walk down the dock. You set up your gear before the boat ever leaves the dock. So I'm setting up, my gear is just like this before this boat ever pulls out. I want to get things ready to dive before the boat's moving, because I don't want to be on a rocking boat trying to assemble my gear. I'm be more likely to get seasick that way. So I do it when it's sitting at the dock. Now, the next boat I'm going to show you is a boat out of, I think it's Barbados or Grand Cayman or somewhere. It's a rib. So it's one of the blow-up boats. It's kind of the Navy SEAL boat looking thing. Now, the other boat, the boat that I really like at top speed, it probably moves maybe 16 miles per hour. This boat moves at 50 miles an hour or something. I don't know exactly, but it's a really fast boat. And you can see how the gear is set up, and you can see how things are, like you're sitting on the white pontoon right here. This is where you sit, so it's bouncy and wet. Your gear sits in here, and it's kind of tippy. This boat gets you to the dive site really, really fast, but it's a rough ride. This boat also usually doesn't, it's not docked. When you get on a boat like this, you wade out, you carry your gear out across the beach into water up to your chest, throw it in the boat, then climb into the boat. So there's differences either way. This would be a back roll entry also. So, but it's just really fast and kind of uncomfortable. All right, so different type of exits. Basically, I'm going to show you a video of how to get out of the water. When it comes test taking time, be very, very aware of what the test is asking you. And it could be a bit confusing in the sense that a water entry is a boat exit, meaning you're exiting the dive boat, but you're getting in the water. Just be sure you understand what they're asking. Just kind of think it through just a bit. So deep water ladder exits, usually you're going to swim up to the ladder, take your fins off, hand your fins up, and then climb up the ladder with the rest of your gear on. If you need to take your weights out, you can do that, but I prefer usually to keep my weights on. In the smaller boats like that rib, usually you take your fins off, then you take your BC off, then you take your weights off and hand it up, and then you kind of got to climb up in the boat. That's less than ideal, but that's what that boat is. And surf and shore, it just once again depends on what the waves and the surf is and all that kind of stuff. All right, so this is a girl exiting out of the, I think this is Bonaire. And what she's doing here is she's staying kind of hanging on to the ladder. She's not letting it go, because once she takes her fins off, it's going to be hard to swim back to the boat. So she keeps control or contact with the boat. Now, she does unclip her fins, which I don't like that she did, but she did, you know, it is what it is. And she hands her fins up, and then she climbs the ladder up. This is a calm day. Sometimes when it's rough, I'll get my knees on the, or one knee on the bottom rung of the ladder, so that I'm riding with the waves as opposed to kind of doing a trapeze from the rung of the ladder. Yeah. Looks great underwater, but when you're above it. All right, so the dive boat that I'm showing you, and a lot of East Coast dive boats have what's called a Carolina rig. Basically, this is what it looks like. So they'll have a couple 100 feet of floating rope on a buoy. It's usually a yellow rope that trails behind the boat. So what you'll do is you'll do your giant stride off the back of the boat, swim to this floating rope, and hang on to it, hold on to it, wait for your buddy to enter. When your buddy enters, you're going to pull your way up, and then you kind of got to take turns. So just be aware of that. So just FYI, it's my plan, so that when the dive boat stops, I'm ready to dive. I don't get seasick on my dive. I get seasick floating around on the dive boat longer than I ought to be. And also, I'm here to scuba dive, not ride on a boat. So I try to spend as much time in the water as I can. So as soon as the dive boat stops, I'm trying to get off the dive boat, if it's possible, grab the rope, wait on my buddy. When my buddy is ready to go down, I'll deflate here, and I'll kind of just deflate from here and swim this way. You don't want to get under the boat right through here. Well, the motors are off, but the boat's rocking. Okay, so if it's 2 to 3 foot seas, the boat's going up 2 to 3 foot at a time. So if you get right here, the boat might land on you. Sort of, okay? So I just try to stay well clear of this. So I'll usually go from here kind of to here. And about right here is when I'll just kind of make sure everything's fine. I'm breathing, my buddy's with me, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll hold on to this rope the entire time. Now this rope is going to be gradually drifted up and down with the boat, but it's going to be a very easy tug. All right. So right here is where I'm going to kind of check my gauges, make sure everything's good to kind of really start my dive. This is about 15 foot deep, which is also safety stop depth. Sometimes if you're doing a deeper dive, they'll have what's called a hang tank, which is a full regulator set, a full tank that you can breathe on if you need to when you're coming up to do your safety stop. That's not, you don't plan on using that tank. You've messed up if you have to use that tank. Then I'm going to swim down this line. This will be barely moving up and get to the anchor line. Now the anchor line is tied, is actually hooked into the shipwreck. So it's going to be some hard pulls on it. When you grab it, it might be jerking up and down with the waves. It's either going to be an anchor line that came from the dive boat, but sometimes it's going to be a mooring line. And the mooring line means they don't want boats anchoring all the time, so they've kind of established a permanent anchor, so there's always a rope running from the bottom to a float on the top. If that's the case, if that rope's always in the water, be careful holding on to that rope because it might have sea life growing on it and some of that sea life might sting. So if I have to grab a mooring line, I usually do it really gently with 2 fingers. If it's the anchor rope from the boat, I'll grab it and kind of do whatever I need to with it. Let's see here.
Grab it with gloves.
Well, I don't know. I don't usually wear gloves in warm water.
Won't cut your hand.
Hmm?
Won't cut your hand on that rope.
I'm careful, let's say. You can, but I'm pretty careful. So I'd rather have full mobility of my hands than gloves, sort of, because I'm careful. Let's see. Now, you always want to keep contact with all this rope until you're on the bottom, until you're on the dive site. Hold on to this rope. I've had some divers, it was actually a trip with me, they were my customers, and they were following me, and we got surrounded by a school of fish. And I was holding on to the rope. My immediate customers were holding on to the rope. They were just swimming, looking at the rope, kind of beside the rope because they could see it. Then we all got surrounded in a school of fish. My group kept holding the rope. We kept moving on, swam right through the school of fish. They were like, wow, look at the cool school of fish. And when the fish were gone, the rope was gone too. Like everything was gone. They couldn't find anything anymore. So they descended, but they didn't find the shipwreck. They didn't find the reef. They didn't find anything. They kind of had a really bad dive of nothing but sand where they should have just been holding on. All right, so this is the hang tank that I was talking about. Don't plan on using this. It's your job to monitor your air supply. So it'll be a little harder as a new diver because you're getting used to your air consumption. These computers will show what's called a SAP rate, surface air consumption rate, and an RMV rate. So it'll give you a good idea how much air you're using. It kind of does the math for you. So it's pretty nice. It'll tell you how many minutes of air you've got left based on the depth that you are right now. All right, so this is a kind of an idea of what this Carolina rig looks like in the water. So you'll see right here, that's the rear of the boat, the 15-foot rope going down, the horizontal line running across, and then it goes down to the anchor. And this is the kind of the safety tank right here. Stay on the line, really important. Now, on this dive, or when you're doing this safety stop, but not safety stop, but when you're on this line, be looking for things because you've started your dive or you're still on the dive, so you might see cool stuff. One of the coolest fish I've ever seen was at the end of the dive at my safety stop. I had already clipped my camera off. I was like dive over. Now I'm just kind of preparing to get out, and a mola swam by. Everybody else was out of the water. I was the only person still in the water, and a mola, or an oceanic sunfish, it's like a great big swimming fish head that's 9 foot tall. It looks like you take a fish and cut off its body and it's just its head. And I saw one swim by, but I couldn't get my camera out quickly enough to get pictures of it. It was really, really cool. All right, so this is a video from the same dive boat, South Carolina coast. This will show you an average day of viz, not a good day of visibility, not a bad day, but decent. And this isn't a huge school of fish that's swimming around us, but there's a good bit of fish around us here. These are bait fish here. So I'm swimming down the anchor rope here, and the anchor is tied off to a chain when the chain is wrapped around the shipwreck. Notice my breathing rate. It's calm and cool, like I'm just breathing calm and slow. And these are amberjack, these big fish.
Better visibility than I thought you had.
Yeah, this is not bad. It's not, I mean, sometimes it's way better, sometimes it's way worse. A little bit green.
So how long of a boat ride is it?
This was probably an hour and a half boat ride. Usually South Carolina dives are like 45 minutes to 3 or 4 hours, depending on where you go. I usually take a noise canceling earbuds and just kind of listen to music. I've got some really good Bose earbuds that cancel out the drone of the boat noise. If you can see how the chain is under a good bit of tension, it's kind of shaking here. So I'm arriving at the bottom of the shipwreck. So when I get to the bottom, what I usually do is I'll take a compass heading and swim in a straight line from that, or I'll follow the edge of the shipwreck or something. You really want to be careful to find your way back after the dive. You don't want to do an ascent just mid-ocean if you can help it, because it's going to be, surface swims are really hard and sometimes kind of impossible. So ascend on the anchor line, and it's important to keep up with your compass and stuff. So when you're disassembling your scuba gear at the end of the dive, if you're trying to remove your regulator and it's hard to turn and you can't get it off, you probably haven't turned the tank off. And even if you have, you've still got pressure in the line. You have to bleed the pressure from the line. Just keep that in mind. It's really, really important to not get any salt water into the first stage of the regulator. 3 drops of salt water into that first stage regulator are going to degrade its performance by 30%. It's a permanent degradation until I rebuild the regulator every year. So don't get any salt water into the first stage. The dust cap is this part right here. You will sometimes see divers take their scuba tank, blow air, and blow dry that dust cap dry. Don't do that. That's considered bad form. While yes, it does blow it dry, it also blows water everywhere. And it's just as likely to blow salt water into your regulator as to blow the dust cap clean. And divers are trained to notice leaks and hissing and things. And so when you do the psh and blow it dry, everybody's looking to try to stop that leak. So it's kind of a jerky move as well. So I wouldn't do that. So once again, remember how I was breathing. Focus on breathing slowly. Breathe just as much as you need to, but try to stay calm and relaxed. The more you dive, the more dives you have under your belt, the better your air consumption is going to be. Just focus on staying kind of calm and relaxed. I've had divers that have said, wow, you breathe really slow. How do you do that? And I said, well, I'm just breathing. And the divers will say, well, I'm just doing that sort of thing. Just kind of try to stay calm and everything else will work its way out. So in the pool, we're going to go over snorkel skills, so don't worry about it too much. We'll go through all these skills and we'll go hands-on with these skills, so we'll get there. So one skill that we will do is regulator clearing. So some of the stuff we're going to do is we're going to be taking your regulator out of your mouth, putting it back in your mouth. We all drink water. We all take drinks of things. It's not a big deal to get water in our mouth. The guy right here in the next little video is going to show you how to do regulator clearing. It's important to stay calm. It's nothing to freak out about. It's you just take your regulator out of your mouth, point your mouthpiece down so that it doesn't blow too much air. Put it back in your mouth. Your mouth will be full of water. Put your tongue over the hole. If you think about it, push the button on the front and it'll blow all the water out. See, he didn't immediately turn his down and it was blowing air. Now, something I want you to start thinking about now is whatever happens underwater, do your best to handle it underwater. If you get a little choked, if you see a fish, if your fin falls off, whatever else, as long as you have air, it's only an inconvenience, okay? What would hurt you is if something bad happens and you shoot to the surface, the shooting to the surface is going to most likely hurt you, not the whatever bad happens. Even if you get bit by a fish or pinched by a crab, that's not life-threatening. Shooting to the surface because you got pinched by a crab, that could be potentially life-threatening. So as long as you have air, stay calm, let's solve it on the bottom, and then go up if we need to. So a skill that we're going to do is regulator recovery. I'm pretty lenient on skills for the most part, but this regulator recovery, I want you to do exactly the way I ask you to do it, because you really have to do it exactly the right way or it's not going to work. So let me just kind of demonstrate this if I can get this off. Okay. Can you see me up here? Can you see me? You got me? Okay.
I gotcha.
All right. So regulator recovery, I'm going to move out of the recorder here. All right. So regulator recovery basically is, wow, look at that cool fish, and I spit my regulator out. All right. No big deal. Don't panic. You still got air in your tank. You just got to get your regulator back. There's two ways to do it. Two ways to do this. One I like the best, one I like the least. The one I like the least is with your left hand, reach down and find the bottom of your tank, shove it up. Now with your right hand, reach back to where you feel the hoses start, track them down, find one, put it in your mouth, clear it, start breathing again. That one's hard because I have achy old shoulders and that doesn't work well. It kind of does, but not really. The one that I like the best is you're going to lead. So, wow, look at the fish, spit my regulator out. This is the one I want you to do exactly the way I say. Lean forward and to the right just a little bit so maybe things start dangling out. With your right hand, run it down to the center of your thigh. Follow around to your butt, follow around to the tank. Once you get to the tank, sweep up and over, and you'll have one or two hoses in your hand. How people mess this up is they'll try to abbreviate it, and that misses it almost every time. So if you're good dying almost every time, you can speed through it. But if you want consistency, follow it around and do it exactly like I say, and it'll work every time. Does that make sense?
But if you have a full face mask on, you won't have to worry.
No, correct. Unless your buddy or somebody else needs it or something. All right, so let's see which video this is. So the most important rule of scuba diving is breathe continuously and never hold your breath. Even when you don't have a reg in your mouth, you can't hold your breath. You've got to have a steady stream of bubbles coming out. All right, so this is our regulator recovery. This guy's going to do this for me. All right. Next skill we're going to talk about is BC removal and replacement. The reasons you might need to remove your BC underwater is, remember we talked about your tank might slip or something like that, and you might not be able to, or you probably can't adjust it back here. Sometimes your buddies can help you, sometimes they can't, but this is a required skill. One thing I want you to think through ahead of time is that your BC is going to hold your weights. It's also holding your air. Everything is tied together, and in your wetsuit, you're going to be buoyant. So if you take your BC off and drop it, it might sink, carrying your regulator with it, and you might float away from it. So that's a bad plan. You want to maintain positive control over it. Also, when you're coming out of it, take it off in the way that makes the most sense, meaning your air hoses are coming from the right. So you don't want to get tied up in it. So watch this guy do this here in a minute, and it'll kind of show these guys do this. It'll show you the right order. So she's taking her left shoulder off first. That gives her the most use and most length of these hoses. When she puts it back on, she's going to put her right arm on first, and then her left. Same thing. So it's not a big deal if you get water in your mask. There are times that I intentionally get water in my mask. If my mask is fogging, whatever else, I'll flood it a bit, swirl it around, and then get the water out. Ideally, your mask doesn't fog, but sometimes that just happens. So don't inhale through your nose when this is going on. Try to always be exhaling just a bit. Look up, push right here, exhale out of the nose. You'll push all the water out. One thing that is hard to teach is sometimes divers will not blow out of their nose. So they'll, and no air goes into their mask, and it doesn't blow the water out. And they say, I am blowing it out of my nose. And like, no, there's no bubbles coming out of your nose. It's all coming out of your mouth. It's hard. I can't say blow here, not here, because you consciously, like, it's hard to like say one or the other. Let's watch this. So this is mask removal and replacement. Just stay calm, don't inhale through your nose, and we'll get you through this. Easy enough, okay? It's harder, the hard part, like most of us can hang out underwater all day without our mask on. It's the putting it back on is the hard part, because now you're doing something without your mask on. There's a couple of different ways to do it. I don't really care how you do it. You can put the mask on your face, then put the strap on. You can put the strap behind your head, then pull the mask down over your face. Whatever works for you works. I'm good either way, and we can try it as many different ways as you want to. If you're wearing contacts or something, just keep your eyes closed when you do this, or you may lose a contact, all right? And we'll talk about glasses and stuff for you later. Now, the next video is a guy that freaks out doing this skill. So now we're doing this at the quarry, and this will show you an average-ish day at the quarry. A little bit dark, a little bit green, and he kind of freaks out during doing this, and he does it wrong a couple of different ways. Basically, I ask him to fully or partially flood his mask. Basically, I'm not even asking him to take his mask off. Fill his mask halfway with water, look up, push here, get the water out of your mask. Blow out of your nose, get the water out of your mask. He starts to do that, and then kind of goes wrong, and then takes his mask off, and then spits his regulator out. I'm trying to give him his regulator back, and he won't take it. And he just completely freaks out. And like I'm giving him like all the different ways to fix it. You can stay underwater all day without a mask, but you can't stay underwater all day without your air, and he spits his air out. So let's just watch this. And then he shoots up. Doesn't handle it on the bottom. So I'm asking if you're okay. Then I just said, all right, flood your mask. So he's making sure there's no air in his BC. He does a partial flood, takes his mask off, starting to freak out. Tries to put his mask back on. Starts going up.
I can understand that. I can understand that 100%.
Well, but He had plenty. He had plenty of air. He could have sorted it out on
It's
the bottom.
because the nose.
Well, yeah, but you can inhale through your mouth, exhale through your nose, and that's fine. Now, one thing,
He's
just
probably scared about blowing it with his nose. It's gonna go up his
he
nose.
could be, but one thing that you can't feel here is that this was very cold water he was in. This was at the quarry when it was cold, so that was less than ideal. But that's when and where they chose to go diving. So
Did he do better though? Did he finally get it?
he did not. So
you
you asked, he did not get it.
Have you had anybody else freak out like that and be able to do it?
Only you.
I know.
I'm trying to. That's a harder question.
Because that
So,
right there, I know what he's doing.
yeah, but that doesn't happen often. So I promise that doesn't happen often. Usually we get everybody through it.
Okay.
So
You make us take our mask off down in Florida too?
you don't have to take it off.
Yes.
Cool.
You have to take it off and put it back on in the pool. In Florida, you have to fully flood it, but not take it off. So no big deal.
Okay.
All right. So ideally, when you're fine tuning your weights to try to get your weights like the least amount of weight you need to have, what you're going to do is you're going to do a weight check at the end of the dive when you've used up most of your tank air. Now, remember, you're going to have about 6 pounds of air in your tank. You want to use that air up and then see how little weight you need to stay down. We're not going to go too much into fine tuning your weight right now. There's a buoyancy class that will fine tune it, but right now we're going to put you a little heavy, probably, because you can always add a little more air to your BC. Now, we're not going to super overweight you. We're going to have you pretty close to right, but we're not going to like super duper fine tune you just yet. There's another class that we can do that later. So when adding air to your BC, you want to do it only in small bursts. Be ready to add or vent air to the BC as needed. And so what I mean by that is if I want to add some air to my BC, there's a button and you do pss, pss, see if it does what you need. If it doesn't, pss, pss. What you don't do is pss. You could use this as an elevator button, and then you'll go flying out of control to the surface, and then I'll get upset because you're being dangerous and all this kind of stuff. So small bursts. We don't use our BC really at all to go up. We use our BC to become neutrally buoyant, and then we kick our way up slowly. Usually I'm letting air out of my BC as I go up, because during the ascent, air is expanding in my BC. So I'm letting air out so that I'm controlling the rate of speed going up. All right, we've been going at this about an hour. Let's take about we're back and going again. So when you're going to start your descent, it's important to go down with your buddy. So you want to agree with your buddy that you're ready to go down. So, and you can't meet your buddy on the bottom. There's no, I'll see you down there. You go down at the same speed. If your buddy needs to go slowly, you go slowly too. Because if he gets in trouble deeper than you can't help him, whatever else. You go down at the same speed. I'll usually pick something on land, the beach, something, even the dive boat, so that I go down looking at something. Because if you don't go down with something in mind, kind of a little bit of orientation, you might spin going down, and as soon as you get to the bottom, you're kind of lost right away. I usually take a compass heading too as I'm going down. As soon as my ears get wet, I'm going to pop my ears. So I'm going to pinch my nose and blow into my ears. And then every couple of feet I go down, I'm going to equalize. If I start to feel discomfort, I've gone down too far, so I'll come back up. Now, I don't necessarily need to surface to try it again. I'll come up a few feet until I can equalize, and then come up a few feet more if I can, and then focus on going down really slowly. Some people will say, I can't dive, I've tried it and I can't equalize. Usually it's they've not gone down slowly enough. Just about everybody can equalize. You just might have to go really, really slowly. And we've got some ways that can get you going down really slowly. Before we get to the bottom, I see the bottom coming. I don't want to hit the bottom. I'm going to see the bottom coming, and I'm going to start inflating on my way down so that hopefully I'm going to arrive at the bottom neutrally buoyant. So when it's time to go up, once again, make sure your computer says you can go up and what it needs to do. If you followed your computer's recommendations, you shouldn't need a decompression stop, and y'all aren't trained to do that. But you're going to make a safety stop. You want to agree with your buddy that it's time for you to go up, and you want to go no faster than the most conservative computer, meaning my computer might say we're cool, yours might say you're too fast. We're going to go with the one that says we're going too fast, the most conservative computer. And then you always want to make a safety stop. If you do a 16-foot dive, we don't need to do a safety stop at 15 feet. But if we go much deeper than that, we need to do a safety stop. That's just for extra safety. It's 3 to 5 minutes at 15 to 20 feet, something like that. I always do it at 15 feet. The hang line on that boat that we were looking at earlier, that rope is at 15 feet. So usually on ascent, once again, when we're ascending, we kick our way up. We don't use our BC to come up, but because when we're ascending, air in our BC is expanding, and we usually need to let a little air out of that BC as we're coming up. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, but when you come up, let air out so that you don't get out of control and go up. If your buoyancy is under control, all you need to do to hover is stop swimming. So a lot of divers that have bad buoyancy, the way they'll find neutral buoyancy is that they make it so that they're always sinking just a little bit, and then they always kick to offset that constant sinking, and that's what they call neutral buoyancy. But the problem with that is when we stop to rest and where we're catching our breath, they're still having to kick and they don't get any rest. Then they get tired and they just don't do a good job with it. But what you're looking for is that when you stop kicking, you're just hanging out like a submarine just floating there at the depth you want to do. Buoyancy control is the sign of a good experienced diver. There's lots of experienced divers that aren't good divers. They may have been diving for 20 years and their buoyancy is not good, and that's just something to be aware of. Sometimes a diver will say, sure, I'll help you. I'll show you how to do this. They might not be a good diver either, so just keep that in the back of your mind just a little bit. So you want to think of the environment when you're diving. You don't want to be walking on the water, on the bottom, rolling around on coral, killing coral, things like that. And that's part of the reason why I say just assume everything in the ocean stings. Everything in the ocean doesn't sting, but if you think it does, you're probably less likely to hurt it, and it's less likely to hurt you as well. Better divers with better buoyancy also get to go to the better dive spots. So you should really work on being an expert diver as far as buoyancy is concerned. There's an additional add-on class that you can take. Don't take it right now. Get some diving under your belt. Let's get you pretty good at diving and then talk about that class later, maybe. But let's just get some experience under your belt for the advanced buoyancy class. Think of divers like the first day of us. Now, as you, my students, we're not doing this, but anytime you go to anywhere diving outside of class, if you go diving with me, this sounds bad, but the first day or the first couple of days, the guides, the instructors, they're judging you, but they're not judging you negatively. They're trying to see how good you are to see if they can take you to the good spots or not, sort of. And what I mean by that is think of if you're a bunch of toddlers, they're not going to take you to an art museum. If you're an art connoisseur, they're going to take you to the cool art museums. Sort of the same stuff. So if your buoyancy's bad, they're going to take you places where they don't care if you break stuff. If your buoyancy is really good, you're going to get to see the cool stuff. So it's a reason to get good with buoyancy. Just one of the reasons. So one of the ways divers can start to get the hang of buoyancy initially is to do what's called a fin pivot. Now our BC is a rough buoyancy adjustment. Our lungs is kind of how we fine tune our buoyancy. With a fin pivot, what we're going to do is we're going to lay face down on the pool and with our BC deflated and take a deep breath. If nothing happens, we're going to add a little bit of air to our BC and then take another deep breath. Our goal is that without using our hands, without doing anything, just by taking a deep breath, the air in our lungs causes us to pivot up on our fin tips. When we exhale, we go down. So all we're doing is breathing in and out, and we're doing this. So now these are students, so they're not experts at this, but you'll kind of see what this looks like. She's doing a pretty good job of this with that orange regulator. So she was, until I said that. So you need to be really aware of changes in depth as well. A lot of times what newer divers or even experienced divers will do is at the end of the dive, they're swimming up there might be 3 feet off the bottom, but the water is getting shallower, and at some point they're going to get very buoyant, and one of the buddy team will drift up. So almost always when a buddy team loses each other, it's one of the buddies drifted up at the end of the dive. So when I'm getting shallower, I'm venting air from my BC so that I don't drift up. Now, this diver, you've seen this diver before in these videos. This is Bonaire again, and she's just kind of having fun with buoyancy. So here in the classroom, I have to stay with my butt in the chair, my feet, I have to stay supported somehow. But this is a pretty decent diver here, and she's doing barrel rolls and rolls back and forth, just playing with being neutrally buoyant in the water. And it's fun that you can do this stuff. You know, I can't do a cartwheel here in the classroom, but anybody just about when they become a little better of a diver, they can do all sorts of rolls. So this diver is going to do some of this stuff for us. We're doing over this in a spot in the sand where if you do hit the bottom, it's not going to hurt anything. It's just sand here as well. She did kick the sand up a little bit right here, but it doesn't matter. All right, now the next video is in Cozumel, and this is a swim through. So a swim through, it's not a cave, it's just swimming through kind of the tunnels in the coral, let's say. It's really, now once again, don't think of coral as a plant, think of it as a colony of living animals, okay? So in this video, you'll see some divers, and I'm kind of at the rear, and you'll see us swimming through these tunnels. Good buoyancy is really important here. You don't want to hurt the coral because coral stings and you would hurt it. Also, you don't want to stir the visibility up. We stir the visibility up a little bit by kicking the sand here. Another thing to notice is when my video light or my flashlights shine on the coral, you'll see how it brings the color back where it's nice and bright and the color it's supposed to be, let's say. Cozumel has a great coral. Now, these aren't great divers, by the way. Not a good kick using his arms. You shouldn't be doing that.
You should just use your arms to guide you, right?
Or not at all, really. I usually keep my arms either like this or hooked in my waist belt.
So you won't be tempted to do it.
Yeah. Just they don't really help. Keep it bright coral. See this diver with her arms hooked under her waist? This is a good diver. There's a full face. Stuff you see floating is stuff that they've kicked up. All right, so the kick that I want y'all doing, as you can leave it off, that's fine. The kick, because there's more videos coming up. The kick that I want y'all doing as new divers is a flutter kick. You're going to keep your legs stretched out, point your toes away from you, and your kick is really with your thigh, okay? A bad kick that a lot of new divers, like some of those divers were doing, is called a bicycle kick. The bicycle kick is where you bend your knee and your kick is really straightening your knee out. That's less than ideal. Now, there's some other advanced kicks we'll talk about later, but for the basic kick, keep your legs straight, point your toes. The video I'm going to show you now is it's the two divers in front. The first diver is pure bicycle kick. The diver in the middle is kind of an okay kick, and the diver in the rear is doing a good kick here. See how he's just kind of pumping his legs, but he's not really kicking? And the first two divers are also upright moving through the water. The diver at the back's a little more horizontal. Y'all have not seen this video, right? Okay. It's about 20 minutes. This is the official scuba video.
Your journey brings you beneath the ocean. You will feel the strength, sway with the rhythm, and taste the salt. To enter this liquid realm, you must learn to breathe, see, move, communicate, and understand the dynamics of breathing compressed air.
Hi, I'm Tom Miranda, host of ESPN's Outdoor Adventure magazine. Whether I'm exploring deep ocean walls in a research submersible like this, or scuba diving on a tropical reef, the underwater world has opened up a lifetime of adventure for me. Let Scuba Diving International open your door to the underwater world.
Scuba Diving International, along with a textbook, a companion video, and a professionally trained scuba instructor, will help make your initiation into this sport as safe and as fun as possible. The first step on your way to becoming a certified diver is to contact your nearest Scuba Diving International scuba facility. There, you'll reserve a space for the confined water sessions and receive your textbook and video. Home study affords you the luxury of spending more time in the water and less time in the classroom. However, a key element to the success of this program is based upon active participation by each student during all phases of the course. In a comfortable setting, review the companion video as many times as you like, or until you feel comfortable with the content. Remember, the key components of this program are the textbook, the companion video, the instructor, and of course you, the student. At the end of each chapter in the textbook, you will test your understanding as you complete the knowledge quest exams. You will be expected to turn these in to your instructor along with the other paperwork found in the front of the textbook. Now it's time to call the dive facility and schedule a visit so you can pick out the essential items for your in-water training sessions. Diving equipment has gone through many changes since its inception. Modern gear is more comfortable, efficient, and long-lasting. Each piece has a particular function that will allow you to see, breathe, and move through the water safely and in relative comfort. Your equipment specialist will be glad to consult you on the items required for your scuba diving course. Most facilities require you to purchase a mask with a tempered lens and a good fit. A comfortable snorkel with a large bore barrel. You will need a good quality pair of fins. Depending on your personal preference and the geography of your dive destinations, you may want to choose the full foot design with shoe-like foot pocket. The name implies the open heel fin incorporates a fin strap with a quick release buckle to keep the foot secure in the open heel design. With open heel fins, you will also need a dive boot. Booties, as they are commonly called, come in a wide variety of fits. Choose one appropriate for your planned dive destinations. Scuba divers generally must use some form of weight as ballast to permit them to sink or swim in mid-water when submerged. The amount of weight varies with each individual condition. For protection from both water temperatures and environmental factors, an exposure suit is highly recommended. And you'll probably want a durable gear bag to transport and protect your new investment. Although most dive facilities will provide you with the remainder of the equipment you will need, there are additional and more personalized items you may wish to purchase, such as a buoyancy compensator. Probably the most important purchase you will want to make is your own personal dive computer. PDCs, as they are commonly called, come in a wide variety of styles with many features, functions, and benefits, some of which include the ability to adapt a software program specific to the needs of each individual diver. Whether you choose a wrist or console version, computers play an important role in your scuba diving experience. Your SDI equipment specialist will help you choose the model that is right for your needs. As with each manufacturer, Regulators may vary greatly. Some offer a more lightweight and streamlined approach, while others focus on features such as levers or adjustment knobs to control the breathing sensitivity. However, fit and comfort still play an important role in your selection. Although the most common scuba cylinder is the aluminum 80, a wide selection of sizes are available in both aluminum and steel construction. Learning the correct technique to assemble your scuba system and following the same procedure every time is the best way to prevent equipment-related problems. After your first couple of sessions, the assembly process will become second nature. You're now ready for your first scuba diving session, so start unpacking your gear and begin assembling your equipment. Start by checking to make sure the hydrostatic test date is within the recommended. Then look to see if the annual inspection decal is up to date. Now remove the protective valve cover and inspect the O-ring. It should be completely smooth with no apparent cuts or tears. If the O-ring looks rough and worn, like the one shown here, ask your SDI instructor to replace it with a new one. Now we're ready to attach the buoyancy compensator. Place the BC over the cylinder with the valve orifice facing you. Make sure the back of the BC is slightly higher than the cylinder valve. This will prevent the regulator from hitting you in the head while diving. Although most buoyancy compensators have a two-strap system, the one-strap system works well. Lift up the scuba unit by the top of the BC. If the unit slips, readjust the cylinder bands. While kneeling behind the cylinder and BC, unscrew the knob, remove the protective cover, and place the first stage over the valve. Now lightly tighten the knob until the regulator feels secure. Grasp the quick connect fitting and attach the low-pressure inflator hose to the inflator neck. Lay the submersible pressure gauge, or SPG, face down away from you. Open the valve knob counterclockwise until it stops. Then turn the knob back a quarter of a turn. After the system is fully pressurized, check your SPG or activate your air integrated computer to see how much air is in your cylinder. If you're not sure of the cylinder capacity, look for the pressure rating stamped on the crown of the cylinder. For example, an aluminum 80 is pressurized to 3,000 pounds per square inch, or PSI. Listen to the valve and regulator any hissing sounds, which may indicate heat, and check each of the hoses connected to the first stage for the same. If any leaks are found, report them to your SDI instructor. Press the auto inflator button to be sure it operates correctly. Before entering the water, an instructor or dive master will give a verbal briefing to the group of divers under their supervision. In training, your instructor will provide a detailed briefing each time you enter the water. If you put your weight belt on, it will release open to the right side. To put on your assembled scuba system when standing on land, the safest and easiest method is to have another diver help you. Now adjust the straps and cinch down the buckles until the jacket fits securely. You may want to put on your assembled scuba unit in the water. Start by inflating your BC, then place the unit in the water with the second stage secure to keep the unit from floating away. While carrying your mask and fins, enter the confined water areas until you reach a waist-high depth. There you'll put on one fin at a time and secure the fin straps. With full foot fins, simply slide one fin on at a time. You may want to use a hand from your buddy for support and balance. Have your buddy hold the unit open and slip the BC on in much the same way you would a jacket or a vest. Now adjust the straps and cinch down the buckles until the jacket fits securely. You may want to remove some of the air from your buoyancy compensator to ensure better footing. As a buddy team, you will want to display each SPG or air-integrated computer to verify a full gas supply. Start a pre-dive bubble check by submerging the first stage. If no bubbles are detected, then submerge the second stage. And finally, the alternate air source and inflator mechanism. If bubbles are detected, notify your SDI instructor. The first thing that becomes immediately apparent to a diver upon entering a body of water is that without some form of ballast, it's difficult to stay submerged. Archimedes' principle states that an object either wholly or partially immersed in liquid is buoyed up by a force equal to the weight of the liquid it displaces. After removing the air from your BC, you should float at approximately eye level when properly weighted. Without the aid of costly underwater voice communication systems, most divers rely on simple hand signals to convey the message. These signals are quick and easy to understand. There are 3 basic hand signals to indicate everything is fine, or you are okay. These are probably the most commonly used signals during a dive. Using a slicing or cutting motion in front of the throat indicates out of air. When a diver points to his regulator, this means he is either out of air or low on air and wants to share air with you. Stop is indicated by extending your open hand outward, facing away from your body. When a diver is not feeling well or is unsure of an answer, he may move his hand in a back and forth motion. The thumbs down sign is the reverse of the thumbs up sign, and their meanings are opposite as well. Time to descend or time to ascend. When using a second stage, you must breathe in through your mouth and exhale out of your mouth, except when you blow through your nose to equalize your mask airspace. Proper regulated breathing is slow and controlled, with deep inhalations and full exhalations. Both the eardrum and sinus membranes are delicate tissues that can rupture if equalization is inadequate. To avoid injury, start by pinching your nose closed and blowing gently until complete. You should repeat this process every couple of feet upon descent. Your SDI instructor will monitor you closely as you complete each skill requirement. To remove water from your mask, press the top of the mask against your forehead and exhale out of your nose as you tilt your head backward. Another important skill you will perform is a fin pivot. The goal is to demonstrate neutral buoyancy. Simply inflate your BC until you slowly pivot up and down on your fin tips with each inhalation and exhalation. Part of becoming a proficient scuba diver is that learning expert buoyancy control combines the effects of BCD control, lung volume, and body position. The ability to harness the communication that a diver has acquired this proficiency. Along with the other skills in this program, you will learn to share air should you run out on a dive. By studying our mammalian counterpart, the dolphin, we can better understand the dynamics of underwater movement. They seem to embody the essence of the force, as their forces blend to create a catalyst of movement. To perform the flutter kick, point your toes so that your feet are in line with your legs as you alternately kick one leg downward while kicking the other leg up. The body count flutter is the same as the flutter kick, but the calf does not pass below the center line of the body. This helps to avoid raising sediment from the bottom. With the frog kick, you must rotate both legs in an arc from your hips and simultaneously move them inward so that the bottoms of your fins face each other at the center line of your body. To relieve a leg cramp, simply bend forward at the waist and grasp your fin tip. Then pull the tip toward you as you straighten your leg. In a controlled ascent, hold your BC inflator in your left hand, look up, breathe normally, and begin your ascent. The most serious consequences of violating Boyle's law are lung overexpansion injuries. If a diver holds his breath when ascending, expanding air in the lungs may forcibly escape and cause severe damage. In your training sessions, you will learn several types of water entries. The safest entry is determined by the type of platform. environmental conditions, physical ability of the diver, and the sort of dive. The giant stride is the most common deep water entry. When given the signal, simply look ahead, hold your mask, regulator and hoses, then step forward. The back roll is the most common entry from a small boat. Simply sit on the side of the boat, position your hoses and accessories so they will not interfere with your entry, and roll back. Remember, all scuba divers need to be in good physical and mental condition. So do not ingest alcohol, smoke or drugs before a dive. Get plenty of rest and stay well hydrated. As you get ready for your open water checkout dives, relax and feel confident that your SDI instructor will supervise you during all phases of the dives. Place your gear bag in a location recommended by your instructor. When you're assembling your gear on a boat, you'll need to temporarily remove the cylinder from the tank holder. This will allow you to properly position the VC on the cylinder and make it easier to install the regulator. After everything is complete and you've double-checked the assembly, secure the system with a bungee or a rubber cord to keep the cylinder from falling during transit to the dive site. Before donning your mask prior to entering the water, add a few drops of anti-fog solution to the inside of your mask, and then rub it across the lens. Now place your mask, fins, and snorkel in a safe and convenient location until you get to the dive site. And before you know it, you'll be on one of the last legs of your journey to becoming a certified scuba diver. When it is relatively warm outside, divers can become dangerously overheated if they don their thermal protection too soon. Your SDI instructor will notify you when the time is ready to suit up. During the briefing, your instructor will review the ABCs. A, air on. B, ECD partially inflated. C, computer on. D, dive gear on. E, enter on go. Starting the dive with a smooth and safe entry will help establish the enjoyment for your entire dive. To make a controlled descent, check below to see if you have a clear path. Close your ears and sinuses before descending. Signal OK and going down. Use your left hand to vent your VC as you submerge, and your right to hold the descent line. Equalize every couple of feet before you feel any discomfort. Add or vent air to maintain the controlled descent. And check your gauges. Over the course of 4 open water dives, 6 if you've signed up for the Scuba Plus program, you will review and demonstrate all the skills you've learned in your confined water session. Some of these skills will be used on every dive, while others may never be used. However, you should always stay in practice should the need arise. After you've completed all the skill requirements on each dive, your instructor will take you on a guided tour of the dive site. This exercise will help you to develop your underwater proficiency. And remember the memory device, abort. A, abort if you or your buddy have a problem. B, buoyancy control techniques. O, out of air or low on air. R, regulator or equipment malfunction. T, trying to ascend out of dive. When it is time to ascend, hold your VC inflator in your left hand. Breathe normally and follow your instructor to the ascent line. Remember to computerize your ascent, as most computers have visual and audible ascent warnings, so monitor them closely. You will need to vent air from your VC as you start to ascend, and stop between 10 and 20 feet to maintain neutral buoyancy, and conduct a 3 to 5 minute safety stop before surfacing. When exiting the water and into a boat, never take your fins off until you are holding onto the bottom rung of the ladder. Keep the regulator in your mouth and hand your fins up to the dive master. You Now begin your climb one run at a time until safely on board. After you've successfully completed all of your checkout dives, your SDI instructor will assist you in filling out your dive logs. The logbook contains a personal record of your training and recreation dives. Most PVCs are downloadable and will interface with your desktop computer. This is an excellent way to track your diving progress. Congratulations! You are now a Scuba Diving International Certified Scuba Diver. This elite status opens your door to the underwater world. Scuba diving is an adventure that may bring you some of the most exhilarating experiences of your life. It is practiced safely by millions of divers around the world. And now, you are one of them. Becoming an SDI scuba diver is the first step of what will hopefully be a long journey in the discovery of a world you have yet to explore. Use the knowledge you have gained wisely and keep your skills tuned up when diving frequently. Abide by the few simple rules you've learned, and you will find scuba diving a rich and rewarding quest, not just of a lifetime, but for a lifetime.
All right, so let's go over some hand signals just for a minute. All right. So some of these are pretty self-explanatory. All right, so he did this. What does this mean?
Okay.
Yes, but let's put that into some sentences. All right. So what does that mean?
Are you okay?
Yeah. All right. So how would you respond if you were okay?
I'm okay.
Yeah. All right. How about if you're not? That means go up. So he did that. So that means let's go up, and that's considered a command signal that you don't argue with. All right. So,
If I'm not okay.
yep, very good. So she says if she's not okay, she waves her hand back and forth like that. That could be I'm unsure or I'm not okay. And usually you would point to whatever the problem is, like my ears or I'm cold or something like that. All right, so he's doing this. What is this?
Stop. No, out of air.
Out of air. I'd like to share air. Okay. Stop is this, right? Now, what if you see, well, first, what is this?
Stop what you're doing.
Well, that's stop what you're doing.
I
Stop.
don't think they should.
Right. They may not, so we'll go beyond that, all right? So stop and hold. Stop is kind of stop right here, stop whatever you're doing. Hold is wait until I tell you to do something else. So don't go anywhere, don't do anything, stop and hold. Let's see. How about this?
Buddy up.
Well, not exactly. This just means buddy. So buddy up would be a sentence, all right? So if I do this and this, that's you two buddy up, right? How about this?
Where's your buddy?
Yep, where's your buddy? Yep, very good. Let's see. So this would be problems with my ears. How about this?
Cold.
Very good. Let's talk about some animals for a minute, all right? Some just hand signals for, well, we'll do it. But all right, how about, so I would do it this way, but I'm going to do it this way where you can see it. What would that be?
Squid.
Turtle. Yeah, that's a turtle. So octopus or squid would be something like this.
Okay.
All right. How about that?
Shark.
Yep. All right. How about, let's see.
Sure.
Well,
Alligator.
well,
What?
so he says alligator. The signal for alligator is that I'm waving by and I'm headed to the car. That's it. I've done some diving with alligators, and it's very unpleasant.
Right.
So a shark, you can tell if a shark is being aggressive, if a shark is paying you attention. Kind of like what a shark, you can tell if a shark's paying you attention. An alligator can be asleep or about to eat you, and they look exactly the same for the most part. There's not a lot of facial expression that an alligator has. So let's see.
But what is that?
That would be
What was that you were doing?
probably alligator. I'm just being funny with that. But there's not really a hand signal for
making
that.
that one
Yeah,
up.
I'm kind of making that up. But how about this? Say it again. Well, there's not really a hand signal for fish because they're everywhere. But let's call that lobster. Let's
Okay.
call this crab or something like that. All right. Just other random stuff. Let's see. Yeah. So you'll see lots of fish and crabs and shrimp and things. All right. Let's move ahead. So if you run out of air now, thinking back to your general dive, or just thinking about this just a minute, you always watch your air and be kind of conscientious about it. You'll never run out of air. Watch your air. I did a dive a good while back with students of mine, and normally on a dive, I'm checking a student's air a lot because I want to know how much air they have. I'm trying to teach them how often to check their air. But I did a dive a while back that it was very shallow, so I knew it wouldn't be a big deal. But I didn't ask the students how much air they had. I knew how much when we started. Let's say we did like a 10-minute dive or something. I didn't ask them, but I counted how many times I checked my air. At the end of the dive, I said, all right, guys, how many times did you check your air? And one of them said, I don't think I did. And the other said, well, maybe twice. And, you know, it was just a couple of times for each diver for a 10-minute dive. And I said, all right, guys, I'm an experienced diver. I've done thousands of dives. I did mine 37 times that dive. But it's not hard. It's kind of like doing that. All I got to do is glance at my watch or glance. This is how I would check. But when I do a dive, my computer's on my wrist like this. So all I do, and I just check my air. I just kind of glance at it. You know, I can't run out of you. You can't run out of air for me. If you run out of air, you're the one that's out of air. It's a big deal. I've never run out of air because I check my air a lot. I want you to never run out of air either. So back to what this is talking about is if you run out of air, it's way better to borrow or share air with that person or your buddy or a nearby person. So share air, go up with that person. That's a better plan. If you don't have a good buddy nearby, then you're going to have to make a controlled emergency swimming ascent, and this is a big deal. You're going to have to kick to the surface as hard as you can, but you still can't hold your breath. You've got to make a or an ah sound going up so that you're not holding your breath. And you're going to have to swim really hard to the surface here. So we're going to do tired diver stuff in the pool, so we're not going to talk about it this much here. We'll talk about it in the pool and it'll make a lot more sense, and we'll go hands-on. If you get a leg cramp, which may happen, particularly if you get kind of the bad fins, but even with the good fins, you may occasionally get a leg cramp. You really just have to stretch your leg out, stretch your muscle out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my fin tip, I'm going to pull it back, and that'll stretch out my entire leg. If you get foot cramps, that's usually your fin is strapped on too tight. If you get leg cramps, that's just a cramp. All right, so this is a video that's going to show you a guy getting rid of his leg cramps here. So any questions so far, guys? All right, so I'm going to pause the recording, actually stop the recording.